welcome to my first guest and fellow podcaster. I can't call you a guest because I think we started this together and I don't have that feeling of it's one more chat in our uh, continuous ever growing series of conversations. Sujatha, welcome to the show once again.
So much, Bunty. You know what just struck me right now? This is probably 5 years since we just started. I think we started a few weeks after COVID, around the March, April time
Hmm,
frame.
hmm,
And it's almost 5 years.
yeah,
Yeah, it's nice. Yeah. Thank you for having me again.
yes. Um so we've had conversations on a lot of things. Uh, Today, uh, when you very kindly said yes again to having a conversation, I was unsure what kind of direction we should be going, something that we haven't spoken about much.
Hmm.
Uh, so my teenager suggested that we speak about teenagers and having teenagers. So luckily, a few hours back, I was with some school friends and we were talking about kids and I was speaking to some of their kids. And it was about understanding how they want and what they want and how they are going about things and what is their worldview. One of the things that I have realized that is not spoken enough by Indian parents is respect. So there is this given that somebody elder to you has to get respect, but somebody younger to you need not be bothered with. This is something as I have grown up with and I've seen a lot of families do. It is lesser now. Our generation mostly is trying to make amends. Uh, what do you have to say about this one thing to start with? Respect for the people who are younger to us, including our own kids.
Oh, that's a very I'll probably start with my views on it if that's okay.
Okay.
Uh, I would I would probably, it would be easier for me to respect people irrespective of age because I would struggle to respect someone just because they are senior, if that makes sense.
Okay.
It's always been like that for me from a very young age. Just
Okay.
because someone is elderly or senior, I think, like you said, right, a large part of it is also driven culturally. We
Yeah.
are we are forced almost that this is an uncle or an auntie or this is elderly person, you got to respect them because they're older to you or whatever. And most often than not, children and teenagers are overlooked. So I do feel um, it shouldn't be that way. We should probably, I think the message should be you have to respect people irrespective of the age, not for what they, yeah, not just because of the age is how I would put it across. It's very interesting because yesterday we spent some time with a very dear family and they have a 9-year-old boy. I had some wonderful time with this family. Me and my daughter spent a day with them yesterday. I'd probably have more respect for this 9-year-old than most older people that I know in my life. It's not because he says the right things. It's just the way he is, very fearless, respectful as well, and it's just inspiring. I personally think it's probably more inspiring to be with the younger generation uh, because I think they force you to think and really reflect on most things, I would say. And it is, I personally find it easier to be with the younger generation than with the older generation. I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. I have a question on that. You said that it has always been so. So I would actually ask you to get into that mind space and tell me why has it been the other way around? Because when we were growing up, it was a given that you were told at least you respect them because they are your elders. So there is this teenage angst that happens to all of us for a while.
Okay.
Some of us uh, also go through this for a longer time. But why would it continue in your case as a thought process? I mean, you may have been respectful to them in the way they demanded sometimes, and I'm not even denying that it happens to all of us. But why did you think otherwise? Like, what made you go against the grain?
It's very interesting you asked me that because it takes me back to probably when I was the age of our daughters, if I may say that, where where I felt I had to be acknowledged or seen for the things that I was doing for my age, and that wasn't coming along for a variety of reasons. Maybe people at the time didn't even recognize that you, just because someone is 16 or 17, it doesn't mean they have to be invisible. So for me, my gripe probably started with my own self, if I may say that. What I
Okay.
am probably contributing or being as a 16 or a 17-year-old was probably more at the time than some of the adults that I knew at the time as well. So it came from a deep place for me that age shouldn't really matter when it comes to respecting youngsters. It is what they do and how they are as well. It's
Okay.
This is a fancy word now, but I don't think it existed back then. It is probably about making one feel inclusive, irrespective of their age.
Yeah. I will not get into the inclusive territory because that itself is a very huge
Yes.
topic that one can discuss. So I want to provoke you with a question here. How do you deal with a difference of opinion with your teenager, if I may ask? If this is your point of view, that they, so if there is a simple thing like, okay, there's a night out happening, you are not okay with it, and she is okay with it, or she is adamant about it. Even if hypothetically, I do not know what's the real scenario at your place, and
Mm.
but how would you see it? How would you resolve it? What are the things you would do to express this respect when your own opinion is contradicting the immediate discussion?
See, in full transparency, right, I very rarely have a difference of opinion with my teenager. So that's the starting point, if I may say that. Most
Okay.
often than that, we are mostly aligned. But in that very few and rare occasions where I feel there is a difference of opinion, I take a step back and I ask myself, what am I making it about? Am I making it about me and my ego, or is that something else deeper there? So for me, that is always the starting point, to be honest. Also, because I think when it comes to my daughter, both me and Anand have always treated her more as an individual um, with her own views or her independent thinking. And to be fair, Ria has always demonstrated that from a very young age. So implying my beliefs and thoughts forcefully is doing a disservice to myself and to her as well, to my core parenting that I have, probably values that I may have instilled in her. So that is how I see it. Because it also, for me, I mean, hypothetically, if Ria says she's going for a night out, uh, I trust my child that she will be responsible. Freedom comes with a lot of responsibility, and that is something I have been very conscious in hammering into her from day one. And so far, she'll be 18 this year, and I can say so far, it's been uneventful since she became a teenager. And even if, like, last year she went for one of these music festivals, I have no bloody clue what a music festival is. I've never been into one. You only read the horror stories, right? This happened, that happened, all that. But it can also be a time when youngsters are going to have fun, to experience music or a sense of community, or just to hang out with their friends, I guess. So it was Ria who actually told me, it's not all you read, Mama. She said, we are going there just to have fun. It's about being with the right kind of people and feeling safe. So that's what her emphasis is on. And she has also been very, very intentional in terms of the kind of friendships that she wants to have and the kind of people she wants to go out with. So there is a group that she will go out for lunch on a weekend, or there's a group that she'll go out shopping with, and there are maybe just two or three people she will go out on an evening with, knowing very well that these are a safe set of sensible girls that she hangs out with, and all the parents know where they are. So there is no ambiguity because the space, we've always given her the space to express whatever is going on, good, bad, and ugly. So the chances of she sneaking away, if I may say that respectfully, to do something is probably going to be very remote.
Yeah. Your audio levels have suddenly dropped. Can you just say hi, hello, or something?
Hi, sorry, is that okay?
Yeah, it's okay now.
Okay,
Uh,
sorry about that. Yeah,
no issues.
yeah.
Would it be a separate set of roles if you had a son instead of a daughter? I want your question to include the obviously the cultural thing that I'm coming from.
Yeah.
It's a set of complaints that I hear from both
Mm,
sexes. Not only females, males think that females get a lot of privileges sometimes, that they are being handled with kid gloves on certain things. The other way around. Uh, I personally think every occasion demands a set of decisions that may not be the same every time.
yeah,
Obviously, there is a pattern of characteristics that you draw out, but
yes,
it's it could be male, female, at least in India, considering the scenario sometimes late nights and which place are we frequenting or where you are geographically from. Even in a place like Bombay, which is safer than most of the other
yeah,
cities, the
yes.
geography is sometimes a concern considering the amount of time it takes to travel from one end to another end. And
Mm,
so late nights might be a difficulty sometimes. Not as much as it used to be in our time, but now because the literally the whole city is dug up. Uh, so from
mm,
that angle also. So it is not necessarily about safety from people point of view. It is also time and
yes.
would your answer change? Would your upbringing change? Would your cat change? And if they would, what would they be? Obviously, you stay abroad. There is a little more equality in these things there. But how do you see it? Is my question.
No, actually, I think if I had had a son, the rules would pretty much be the same. In fact, it would be on the contrary. So for me, it would be emphasizing more for him to be the one looking out and making sure that you are respectful about your female friends and whoever you are with. It will be an onus on him to take responsibility, is what I would say, Bunty. But then again, going back to what you said, right? Because I live in a different part of the world, it I think it's the same for women everywhere, irrespective of the color or the ethnicity. I tell Ria there's a very thin line between being fearless and foolish. And that is something I know that's also very contextual. If you're going to go out at maybe 1 a.m. in the night, but if you're with a bunch of people that you feel safe, it's probably okay. But if you're in an unknown place and you find yourself, you don't know where you are, that's being really very foolish, isn't it?
Yeah. Uh, I find in my case, there are times that these discussions don't take the turns that I would think with the best of intent not being conveyed due to the heat of the moment sometimes. Not necessarily only about night outs. Some other
Mm,
thing might happen or may not happen, or there will be other family context coming up, or something that you don't face as a nuclear family setup abroad mostly. But
yeah,
since you've been in India for a long time and you know how these work, so there are
yeah.
times uh, when it is difficult to explain on the spot what is happening. Very, very rarely, but I have done so. I've said, I'm the dad, I decide. Because I
Mm,
don't have the wherewithal to figure out what is the answer. I'll give you the answer for this and I'll give you the reasoning for this. Right now, I'm not in the frame of mind because there are other things
yes.
I am struggling with.
Mm,
Uh, so I'm being a complete pain, but you will have to accept it because I am the parent as of right now. So that has happened with me. I have to agree. Uh, is it right or wrong? I have no clue because there are times when I think, oh, you would want to give a little more leeway or freedom, but on the spot, what is happening is happening. How do you deal with a thing like that? Has that ever happened to you? In other things again, so it's no longer about night outs. I mean, as a generation thing, how do you see a certain thing when she sees it differently? Uh, or else you can also refer to some other parents and their kids you've seen from very close quarters how they work and answer it. Because for me, the what is the mind space you operate from when you have a contextual difference between you and the teenager?
It's a very interesting question. I'm just trying to think. I think one area of difference probably I see between me and Ria occasionally is probably just trying to see how to articulate this. Uh, Probably I would say a couple of years back, I was about the mindset that she should be more, what's the word? She should be more thoughtful or more inclusive, for want of a better word, really. Think about others, kind of a thing. I realize it is coming from a very different place for me because at the time, um, it came from a place at the time because I thought that is how it should be. So I ended up telling her something like, you need to do this or care more about people or something like that. We had this conversation. And then she just turned around and she said, I am happy to care about people if it is a two-way street, Mama, she said. And that at the time didn't particularly sit very well with me because, again, culture plays a big role, right? So I was like thinking, why would you do that? She said, just because I'm not doing that, it doesn't mean I don't care, but it is something that works both ways. And that really set me thinking. And then I went into my quest of trying to find out what does that actually mean, right? Because I have been brought up in a culture which says, put yourself not even after everyone. You shouldn't even be on the bloody line of other people, right? You don't even bloody exist, right? So for me, that unwiring took a very long time. When my then 15-year-old said, how can I put somebody in before me if they don't do that? And why should I do that? You know,
Wonderful.
so it was an eye opener. So for me, when I thought about it and I was thinking, yes, so what my daughter essentially tells me, which I understand today, is you don't have to be nice to people all the time. You can be kind and respectful, and that is good enough. And what I
Yeah.
was doing all along for a very long part of my life was being bloody nice. And now, when I reflect on it, I feel when I was being nice to someone, I was making it about me and not about them. But when you are kind, you are actually operating from a very selfless place and you're doing it without any expectations.
Wow. Uh, Another interesting question that I want to ask you. Uh, do male and female parents operate differently? Uh, I want this more as an experiential answer rather than just a perspective that you have, or because we already have the experience and we've seen uh, how we operate or how our spouses look at
Yeah.
certain things. So
Yeah.
could you give a reason where you had difference of opinion about something, or just for the experience of how a male perspective or a female perspective on parenting is?
Um, okay. So again, I'll take a step back and answer it because me and Anand, I believe that we have fairly similar values. Okay. It comes from there, number one. Um, I think from a male female perspective, uh, I think being a father of a daughter, his lens would probably be more protective, more softer, if I may say that. Whereas I am somebody who's a self-confessed free spirit, as you know that. So my take on things are very different to Anand's. But do we clash? Not necessarily. What I've learned over the years is how you convey your difference of opinion on something. Because I think it's sometimes also educating your other half, if I may say that, right? I see the key word is it's not a better half, it is the other half here, Bunty, right?
Yeah.
So I think
Getting educated might also be part of it, no?
yeah, so it is educating them, right? Things like I remember about a couple of years back, Ria was going for a concert. And then I didn't know, like I said earlier, I've never been to a music concert. So I mean, not a concert, a festival. So I really don't know there's a way you dress, what you do, and all that. And she came down with her friends and she was going out wearing concert or music festival appropriate clothes. Now, that's a very subjective thing, right? And then Anand looked at me and said, "ये क्या पहना है उसने?" So then I said she's going for a concert and she was wearing a cowboy hat and वो टेलर स्विफ्ट का कुछ तो चल रहा था लास्ट ईयर सो शी इज बीन प्रिपेयरिंग इट फॉर 3 months एक साल पहले टिकट भी बुक किया था राइट so I said you have to be in the character and there's nothing wrong about it as long as she is able to carry it and she is fine with it. He said acha, is that how it works? I said I think that is how it works. And then he was able to understand, and then when we went to pick up Priya late in the night, pretty much all the girls were dressed similarly to Ria.
Okay.
So there was a bit of an education, and he was okay with that. It's not that he would say, don't wear this or don't do that. Because I think both he and I come from a culture where these things are not, and I don't think we even knew how these things worked out, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So what I realized to answer your question was yes, I think we do respond to situations differently, but I think it is also about educating the other why it happens. Another example I can give you, right? Priya had a little bit of a milestone last week. So when we came home in the evening, I said, there is dinner, it's there in the fridge, just eat it because I was having some clients. And then I stepped out for a minute and she looked at me. I said, Kya ho gaya? Do you don't want to eat it? She kept looking at me with a smile. I said, do you want to have a takeaway? She said, yes, if you don't mind. And then Anand was like, Are khana to banaya hua hai, right? I said, don't worry. I said, let's order a takeaway for her. And then next day I told them, in that moment, there is food, but
It is about celebration.
it's about celebration. And I think most mothers know only one way to celebrate their kids or parents. It's food, right? And food plays a big part in our lives. And then he said, yeah, Suja, he said, that's probably, I didn't quite look at it like that, right? For him, it was like, I've spent so much time cooking, the food shouldn't go waste. I said, once in a while, if it happens, it's okay because it was her way of celebrating that moment, and that is fine. So things like that.
Uh,
Um, and another thing, one more thing that I'd like to add there, right?
mm,
Again, uh, being in this part of the world, I think social drinking is pretty much a given. Most people, I think most teenagers, if I may say that, they end up having their first drink, not necessarily with their parents. It is usually on the sly, or you go out and you have it the first time with maybe other people or friends. And I think most teenagers not necessarily end up having the most positive experience drinking
yeah.
alcohol for the first time. But what we did with Ria was a couple of years back, we said, if you want to drink, you want to taste what wine looks like, maybe you should do it with us rather than, you know, going out. It's not that we would not want you to, but if you feel like, you probably do it at home, maybe have a sip of wine or something. And for her 17th birthday, she did have a sip of wine and she was okay with it. And now when she goes out, again, because she's at an age, she cannot order it on herself, by herself. She has to be with an adult. I think the rules are different in different parts of the world. So something like that, right? So she knows that she has that space in the house where if either Anand and I have that very rare occasional drink, she's welcome to join us, but there is no pressure. We have a reasonably well stocked bar, which is not under lock and key, unlike other families that I know. But does my child go there to even see what it is or sneak? The answer is a no. So I think we have been able to get past this this big, I wouldn't say it's a hurdle, but alcohol is quite a touchy topic, isn't it?
Yeah. So, if I were to ask you a generic question, vis-a-vis the future, how do you look at parenting in terms of, so I'll contextualize this.
Yeah.
So very often I have said that it is very easy to divorce the spouse. It's not really a big deal because in your head, uh, we are both adults. You can take care of yourself, your physical needs, your emotional needs, your
Mm.
financial needs. To whatever extent, obviously there are other things, and obviously there are emotions and connections that happen. But I'm saying in only in terms of age, you are not really worried about people who are equal to you in age,
Yeah.
unless they are physically, mentally challenged in some manner. But otherwise,
Mm.
you are not too worried. They'll take care of it themselves. But when it comes to kids, we get a little uh, quote unquote responsible in our head that it is up to us that we make them reach a point where they can handle themselves in the world. Uh, if I were to be a little more Indian in thought and 1960s in thought, it's like before we leave the world, let us settle them in some manner. So whether it's financially, family
Yeah.
wise, uh, there is always that question that they are taken care of, and then you can uh,
Exit.
सुकून से मर सकता हूँ वाला जो ये रहता है. Uh, how do you think we see it in today's times with the modern people that we are, with the advent of technology in every space, in the way our family structures and uh, generic structures are crumbling in ways that we did not have when we were growing up. So it is difficult. The amount of access to everything is easier, be it knowledge of uh, good things or bad things, power or responsibility. So you can learn or you can unlearn or you can abuse this privilege. So it is affecting all of us as human beings, not only as a structure. So how do you see parenting's role for yourself in the future? What is it that you are doing or talking to? So one or two interesting things that you spoke of, um, which is coming of age, whether it is alcohol consumption or going to concerts or going to concerts in terms of freedom, the accessing spaces that were not available to you earlier.
Yeah.
But I mean here in a completely mental space and a physical space that has changed its structure because of the internet, because of what is available to us. What is it that you worry about, or whether you talk to, or it's a very open-ended question. I'm not pointing in any particular direction. I'm just saying access is easier of everything.
Yeah.
How do you deal with this thing? Thinking, okay, what will happen to my kid 5 years down the line or 10 years down the line? If she chooses this career, will it be existent? Like this is a question that is running in my mind for sure. As my kid starts to grow and once she reaches the 12th or the equivalent of high school, what you have there, and then you start looking at options. Will that option exist in 3 years or 5 years is a question that none of us is able to answer
Yeah.
uh, peacefully. How do you adjust to this kind of world and what are you doing about it? Or is it a unnecessary question according to you?
I mean, firstly, I would say it's quite an existential question. It is not unnecessary. It's a very
It is.
existential. Uh, and I also believe you can never prepare anyone enough for any kind of failure or success.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I operate from a place, Bunty, knowing very well I will never be there for my child all the time. I probably told her this from a very young age.
Hmm.
It's it sounds a bit ruthless, but I've always told Ria that there are battles that she will have to pick on her own, be prepared to lose and be prepared to win as well. And there are decisions that she may have to take on her own. Again, it's all very contextual. So I think I have let her know that I will always be there when she needs me, but I may not be there all the time. And there are things that she will have to decide on herself, however hard they may be. I know it sounds very harsh, but I've operated from that place maybe for a good 10 years now.
Oh,
Knowing, because the thing is, the minute you are saying, I want to prepare my child, I need to make them financially independent, emotionally independent, you are bloody making it about you and not about them.
yeah, it is a survival thing.
Yeah. It is a survival thing, it is an ego thing, because you want to see the product that you bought in this world, the legacy that you are potentially leaving behind is the best out there. But what control do you really have on that?
My question comes from a vulnerable space, not a ego thing. I am very clear that it is a fear that takes over rather than, of course, it could easily become a power or a ego thing. But
Yeah.
right now, my question didn't come from that space. It is
Okay.
about a fear of the unknown.
Yeah, but again, I, as much as I probably recognize where this question comes from, but I am also somebody who feels, what control do you have on what is going to happen?
Yeah, there is none
Of
at all.
course. Sorry?
There is none at all.
There is none at all, right? And that is how I look at it. And I don't think our children will only have one or two careers. Look at you and me for that matter. Did you and I know what we were going, that we will be doing this maybe 10 or 20 years back?
Yeah.
So then why should they limit themselves? They will figure it out. I think,
Yeah.
again, going back to what I said, we are doing a disservice to ourselves in this context, you and me, if we are going to be really thinking, how will a child shape out or worry out, or how will they manage? That doesn't give me sleepless nights, if I may say that. At least when it comes to Ria, um, I feel she will figure it out. And I don't want to be there every time for her. I'm very conscious about that. So we have this running thing between me and her, right? Small things like she'll say, if we go somewhere, kapda kuch to kharidna hai, she'll say, what looks better, this or that? Unfortunately, my default answer is whatever you feel like, right? The one day she turned around and said, if I knew all the answers, I wouldn't ask you. I want you to tell me what looks good, which one should I get? I said, okay, if it is from that place, I said, then we are not going to have a counter argument on that. I said, then you will have to accept what my
Take
opinion
it.
or my take on it is. If you are able to agree to that, then it is fine, I said. And thankfully, 7, 8 out of 10 times we end up being aligned on, how things should be, so to speak. Um, so yeah, so for me, I think I've always operated from the place that she will figure it out. Maybe because I'm not very hands-on, if I may say that.
No, which is fine. Okay, if not the last question, maybe one of the last questions for sure. Uh, do you talk about values and ethics specifically? Ever sitting down why honesty is important or not important or whatever? In India, there is uh, obviously you know the word jugaad, which is celebrated all over and which also encompasses a lot of gray areas in
Yeah.
moral values. Uh, Sometimes to detrimental effect as far as values are concerned. As I grow, I realize that. So one of the interesting things that my daughter keeps telling me once in a while is, but you are talking at this age. You
Hmm.
weren't thinking like this when you were our age.
Yeah.
So let me know from that perspective, what do you think about the subject?
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
is interesting. And uh, sometimes I have to tell her that I was wrong when I was your age. I am trying to tell you, while it is your call, but I am giving you both pros and cons of what happened.
Hmm.
So my question to you is, from the from the ambit of the values workshop, are there are there any specific talks that you have in terms of values or ethics or rights and wrongs and do's and don'ts, or
Uh,
even experiences that you share with her, which are tough and which are difficult calls to take? So you're getting a good assignment, but it's not a job that you're very happy about in some manner. So would you take
mm,
it or not? And if you're not taking it, what is hurting you?
To answer that question, yes, I do have very long and detailed conversations with Ria. I've always had about values. The thing that I probably told her when maybe she was 13 or 14 is values are something that you first pick up from your family. And as you grow in life, it will keep changing. You'll be adding some, you will be losing some, but you need to arrive at something that is core, which is going to be across your relationships. Like I used to give her an example that for me, irrespective of my whether it's a personal relationship or a professional affiliation, trust and honesty, respect is probably a non-negotiable thing. If that doesn't exist for me, then I would struggle to go ahead. But one of the values that we discussed very recently was ambition, being aspirational. And it came at the back of something that Ria was aspiring to achieve in the school and which she did. Because I think for us girls, if I may say that, all the more culturally, being ambition is not a right word. It is not something you talk about. It's you can't even say I'm ambitious, right? I mean, it's being a woman myself, maybe 10 years back, if somebody would say that I'm very ambitious, I would probably look at them from a very different lens because that's a bad word, right?
Was,
Sorry?
was. That was a
Yeah,
bad word for a long time.
it was a bad word for some time. But when I see the kind of ambitions Ria has today, I don't try to temper it down and say, beta, replace it with aspiration. I just tell her ambition is good as long as you know uh, how you are going to go about it. I know again it is very contextual, but my thing to her is uh, try and be as open and honest as possible in whatever you're trying to go and achieve. And you got to ask yourself, what is it that you're willing to lose or pay to get to that? It has to be her journey, right? I can i can only tell her the pros and cons of what it means, whether that is understanding other people's perspective or taking their viewpoints in consideration, whatever that is. So yes, to your question, we do have this conversation, and I think where Ria is, if I may say that, she's still figuring it out, but I think she's got her core very, very solidly. Like I'll give you a small example, right? So whenever we come to India, which is probably, we are very, very lucky that we are able to make a yearly trip, at least individually or as a family as well. The way she is with people is very different to how she is here. Not in a very drastic way, but she is someone who's always been very kind and respectful, irrespective of age.
Yeah,
And I think that's what our kids pick up from us. They see how we treat others, right? Whether it is bickering about somebody or talking nicely. Kids are listening to us all the time. We don't even have to sit them down and say, do this or don't do that. They pick up all the time. So I think, if anything, it is probably down to us in terms of what values we are exhibiting and practicing that they are able to aspire or take on, I would say. And to be fair, even your value and my value, some of it has been changed, hasn't it, Panti? We've added new ones. We've ditched some of, at least for speaking for myself, I
yeah.
have definitely ditched quite a few of them. Yeah.
One of the thoughts that came to me while you were speaking is the values workshop started because of my kid. And I
Oh,
remember when I wasn't living up to something that I was asking her to do, and she asked me, and I said, I'm struggling with it. I'm telling you that this is the right thing to do, but I am unable to live up to
yeah.
it. And then she, with all her innocence, she said, oh, that's the point. Okay, but it's still the right thing to do. I said, yeah, it is the right thing to do. I am unable to reach that. And that
Yeah.
kind of provoked many such conversations, and that led me to having these conversations with adults as well. People like you and I, when we started, and then other friends who came into this kind of conversation. Even now, when I speak to people, there are a lot of people who refuse to come on the podcast saying, "Oh, I haven't achieved anything," and I tell them this is a losers' conversation. I
Yeah,
never made it
absolutely.
about winners.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's interesting you say that because, again, since we are specifically speaking about teenagers, I think you can kid yourself by thinking that you are in control of them. But I think the best way to probably go about it is whatever behavior you're displaying at home or outside when they are around. I think the best thing to do is probably lead by example. Like small thing, right? Like India में कैसा होता है हम किसी के घर जाते हैं तो we always make it a point to take something with us. At least for me, I grew up in a family where my mother would say, खाली हाथ किसी के घर कभी नहीं जाते types, right?
Yeah,
And I somehow continue to do this even here. So, so one day Ria came and said, I'm going to my friend's place. Do we have any chocolates at home? I said, why do you want chocolates? You're going to their house, right? She said, no, Mama, I can't go empty handed, no?
yeah,
So things like that, right?
yeah, yeah. And it
It's
is
like,
good because I think one of my concerns has been also the state of the world for a long time, and it really becomes very difficult to see the world disintegrate the way it is all over the world, not only within the country but outside.
oh,
So much
absolutely.
hatred, so much posturing, so many ego clashes. I have come to the conclusion that the only thing in control is our own self,
Yeah.
and we can only try to do what we can do best. And then it has a bit of a small ripple effect. I don't know how, like perhaps there is one Gandhi, one Nelson Mandela, one Lincoln, perhaps in the world. But
Yeah.
we could be a small ripple effect
Yeah.
cause, perhaps, if we can. And that
Yeah.
kind of helps us when our kids get back. Something like this happened with my kid some time back, and she ended up calling up and said, "Oh, I want to donate this to her." And
Mm.
in fact, I had to control her. Okay, look, don't go out of control. Do it with a limitation. Do it more regularly rather than going like bombastic in the first time and then think, "Oh, what happens next?"
Mm.
She's learning. There is a lot of middle class values I try and instill. There is a lot of kindness that we speak of.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, in fact, it is beautiful because within the family also sometimes that your kids are kind to you when you are losing your uh, handle about things, and they'll come and just be kind and get you a glass of water or make some tea for you or some do something where they are, and you are like, hello, I'm not responsible for making this happen. You are.
No, absolutely. And I think they will arrive at their own values, whatever is relevant for them in that stage in their life. Like Ria had an event in school last week, and as part of that, she had to deliver a speech. Bunty, it was an eye opener when she said, when she ended her speech saying that she rates kindness, confidence, and resilience as the key values that she will bring for
Oh,
whatever she was aiming for. And I was thinking at that moment, and I'm making this about me now, and I was saying, I'm done. My role as a mother is redundant, and I'm proud. She's ready for the world, and I can do whatever I want. It was a very liberating feeling, and I don't think even for a moment I felt I'm losing control. I was thinking if this child is able to touch upon confidence, kindness, and resilience as her values to get into the next stage or whatever she was aspiring last week. I said it's done, right? So going back to what you said, there isn't an element of well, your concern will always be there. You want your child to do well, but I think recognizing that they will be fine. If not, they will figure it out. I think that I find it to be a more easier place to be than constant worrying.
so so thank you for this wonderful conversation. We've spoken about a lot of issues on parenting teenagers.
Yes,
And even as we speak, I find that we are the recipients of wisdom and love from a very deeper level, even though they are younger to us in age.
yes,
That is one of the liberating things that you mentioned.
yeah, and just if I may just add one thing very quickly, I think it's from Ria and some of her friends is what I've also learned that you can treat everybody equally and with respect. It's got nothing to do with age.
Of course. Wonderful. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. I shall see you around soon.
All right. Thank you, Bunty. Good to catch up again.
Bye.
Good luck. Thanks.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.